In this video, I want to introduce you to something called cabinet scrapers. And these are kind of an alternative to sanding. They go way back. They've been around long before decent sandpapers were available in the world. And I want to show you what they look like and what they do. A cabinet scraper is just a piece of sheet metal, essentially. It's high carbon sheet metal, which means that it can take and hold an edge. Now this is a dirty old one. I use it for scraping glue and things. And that's one of the uses of a cabinet scraper. When you're gluing a couple of pieces of wood together and there's a little berm of glue between them. When it's half hard, you go at it and you just scrape. You give it a little bit of a bend in order to concentrate the contact point in one spot, and then you just scrape. And you can see I've used this for glue. I really need to clean this one, but this is my glue scraper. When I'm actually wanting to smooth wood with a cabinet scraper, I'll use something that I don't use for glue, and that's this one here. But you'll notice it's in a holder, and that's a very important thing. I mean, you can use cabinet scrapers freehand, just in your hand like that. And as I said, if you give them a bit of a bend, it concentrates the contact point in one spot, as you can see. So you can kind of concentrate in different areas as you work around the board. But a holder does that for you. This is made by, what's Veritas is the brand name. Lee Valley Tools manufactures a lot of really interesting and innovative tools, and this is one of theirs. And the cabinet scraper just fits into the holder. So the pieces on the end secure, the clamps on the end secure it in the holder. You can see it slides in and out. And this knob in the middle introduces more or less curvature to the piece of metal. Another advantage of the holder is that a regular cabinet scraper, when you use it for more than a few minutes, actually gets quite hot. It'll burn your thumbs. I mean, you can't fry an egg on it or anything, but it's too hot to hold after a couple of minutes, whereas in a holder like this, heat doesn't bother you. The main thing, well, let me just show you how it works first. So it's actually peeling off very thin curls of wood. So in a sense, it's like a wood plane because it's slicing wood off the surface. Now you might wonder, well, how can a piece of sheet metal slice wood off of the surface? Well, it comes down to what that piece of sheet metal looks like microscopically, or almost microscopically. So a regular piece of sheet metal, if I was looking at the end of it, it might be something like that, right? So I'm looking at the end this way. So it's a magnified view, of course. Let's see, like that. I'm looking at the end. And in its natural state, it's going to have square corners. That will not make the kind of shavings you see here. In order to get those, you have to put what's called a hook on either one side or the other, or both. I've exaggerated that, of course, but that's the idea, that there's a hook on the edge. There's a nice hook on this one. I can feel it. It feels sharp. You can't see the hook, though. It's too small. And the hook doesn't last forever, which takes me to the idea that you can get cabinet scrapers like this that come from the factory with a hook, and they're sharp and they're ready to use, and they last a fair amount of time. Eventually they'll wear out, though. So there's disposable wood scrapers. This is not a disposable one, and in which case I have to create this hook. Now I could go through a whole lesson on how to sharpen cabinet scrapers. There's a fair amount to it. Once you know how to do it, it's no big deal. But essentially, what has to happen is that the edge needs to be bent down. So it starts off like this, and then we apply some pressure, and we slide this over a piece of hardened steel, and it what calls turns a hook. It makes a hook by bending the metal down. It's very, very small, of course. It's, as I said, it's almost microscopic. There are hand tools you can use, sort of hardened steel, that will cause the hook to be drawn. But I really like this. This is another Veritas thing, and this is called a burnisher. This operation, by the way, of turning a hook on a cabinet scraper is called burnishing. It can mean different things too, but that's what it means in this case. Inside this, you can't really see it. I don't think you can see. Let's look out the window here. Yeah. Can you see in the middle of the slot at the bottom, there's a little sort of dark spot there? Well, what that is a piece of roundish hardened steel. And when I take this and I pull it through here like this several times, even going back and forth with a fair amount of pressure downwards, what that does is it turns the hook because there's that piece of hardened metal inside. The nice thing about using a burnisher like this is that you can adjust how much of a hook you put in, so more or less, and it also gets the angle just right. So it's a shortcut. It's a shortcut for learning how to sharpen a scraper so that it actually works. And I'll just give you a little further demonstration here. One interesting thing about scrapers is that, all else being equal, they create the nicest surface on wood. And when I say nicest, I mean the smoothest, because it's not abrasion, don't forget, it's actual slicing off, and you get a marvelous finish if you use scrapers. Now, you can't use a scraper everywhere, really. I mean, you know, edges and ends and different things, they respond better to sanding just because of the shape of them. What I like to use is a combination. I mean, I will use most of the time I use electric sanders for my work, but a cabinet scraper is a great thing, especially if you want a very smooth finish on something simple that's not too big and that you're going to interact with closely. Because the value of a wood finish, how much it means to you, really comes down to how closely you interact with the wood and how often. So if it's something, you know, I don't know, crown molding, say, you know, up top on a room somewhere, you're not going to be interacting with that closely. But if this is part of a cabinet door, maybe in your bathroom or something, and you go into it multiple times a day, you're going to get a relationship with that wood. So you want it to be as nice as possible. It's going to give you joy every time you use it. But so there you go. Scrapers don't always come in straight shapes either. One of the most useful versions of scrapers are ones that have a profile to them, because it's not just wood, not just boards that need to be sanded before using them for anything that matters. It's also trim. It's very important that trim be sanded or refined in some way before you actually use it and start finishing it, especially, once again, if you're using stain, which is going to bring out any errors and imperfections. So tools like this can be used, you know, there's different diameters here, different radiuses, inside, outside. These can be used to scrape the different parts of trim so that it looks as good as it possibly can. So there you go, cabinet scrapers.